Welcome back to the Opposition Podcast. We're not even counting anymore. We're doing them so often now. How you doing,
I know.
Rukshan?
I'm doing good, mate. There's no reason to count it anymore. I think it's just the opposition podcast and 2 times a week.
Isn't it
So I think that's
amazing?
fine.
We're going live,
Yeah.
so and yeah, I'm surprised
Speaking
you've.
of going live, you actually tried to steal my thunder today by doing a live stream, which was subpar quality, of course,
Can you
because it wasn't done.
define try? Because I'm pretty sure from the comments people realised I did steal your thunder, and I did do a live stream.
Yeah.
It, it
But yeah, it was
it's
it was good because there was nothing else there. So we'll treat it as being good because there was nothing else comparable.
It's actually exciting because I've always done those protests, and the way we've worked, even during COVID when you were actually live streaming, you're lucky I didn't have this technology and I didn't know what I was doing back then. But even during the protest back then, basically we had a completely different product at the end, because I was essentially going there, doing interviews, engaged, whatever, whether it was talking to police, talking to people at the protest, interviewing the people that were attending, whatever it was. And then we would come back and produce it and package it and then put it out probably the next day, where you were more just like a live stream of the entire protest. And what we're starting to do now, because we're getting into these live streams, and we're probably going to do a bit together. We were talking about it as well, like when you're available to come out on the stream. But now that we can connect my mic to a live stream camera as well. So I ran 2 cameras today. We actually had Daniel, the security, holding the live stream camera, and it was kind of like behind the scenes. We're going to fix the technical issues. There's a bit of crackling, but it was pretty cool to actually have the mic and to be able to do like long form so people could see how it is actually what we do to be able to get that final product. And it's just, and nobody could complain that we've cut them out of context or whatever. In fact, today, I didn't think about rocking up to a country event full of guys from the bush, because they love their F-bombs, and we've got a few of those in the live stream. I'm like, I'm going to get booted.
That's the one issue with the live streams. I think you can't predict what people are going to say at a protest, or the music that's going to be.
The
music is super annoying, obviously, because it's commercial music sometimes. Like, that's always tough. But anyway, today's podcast, Opposition Podcast, we got a special guest. You can probably introduce him because you guys were with each other today as well. So might as well just.
Yeah, we were with each other today. In fact, I might bring that up. Let's introduce him first. And David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So David Limbrick, you tell the viewers, those who don't know who you are. Well, I don't know where they've been, but who are you?
So I am an upper house MP for the Libertarian Party. We used to be called the Liberal Democrats, but now we're the Libertarian Party as of 2023. And we've always stood up for the individual rights of Victorians. And, I took a promise when I first got elected to Parliament to never vote for an increase in taxes or never vote for a decrease in freedoms for Victorians. And I'd like to think that I've kept that promise and intend to keep it into the future as well. So that's what we're pretty much about.
So what Rukshan was referring to was today's protest. Let me just bring it up. So this is going to be from the live stream. So we've obviously got the full video being packaged up for tomorrow. But so this one's not as clear, but this is when I bumped into his truly today.
We're live as well.
Sure.
So what brings you here, David?
It's a tax. Libertarians don't like new taxes.
And but we're hearing today in the budget there's no new taxes. So what are you talking about?
Well, they passed this before the budget, so it was passed last week. They ran it through until 2 a.m. Eventually, the government did a deal with the Greens, as they do always, and it's passed. So,
are you looking forward to being on the Opposition Podcast tonight?
can't wait.
There you heard it, guys. Tune in from 7 p.m. But for now.
So are you regretting that decision now? Do you still stand by staying up now? We heard your bell was ringing in Parliament just till a minute ago. Are you still happy to be here?
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. And if you ask me any bad questions, there's a button in front of me that says hang up. So, but no, it was fun seeing you today. I'm sorry we couldn't chat longer, but like all the speech, I think the exact moment that you spoke to me was the exact moment that all the speeches started. So you probably had to focus on that. So, yeah.
So tell us what today was about. Obviously, we've got our full report coming tomorrow. But what was it about? And also, we did mention a second there about budget today in Parliament. Where are we?
Yeah, so for a long time we've had this levy that people have been charged with their rates, and this is to cover fire services, right? So, and everyone who pays rates has gotten this levy for some time now. But what the government wants to do is make a bigger levy and charge it to all ratepayers, of course, with differing levels depending on, what your property value is and all this sort of thing. But lots of people are very upset about it. So, and it's very interesting because the people that are upset about it have sort of not maybe been sort of allied together in the past. So the United Firefighters Union, they were the main organisers of today. They don't like it because they don't like the idea of the government using their name to bring in this new tax that's going to hurt all Victorians. CFA volunteers don't like it. Farmers don't like it because they're going to have to pay far more than anyone else. And there was a bunch of city ratepayers as well who've just sort of cottoned on to the fact that they're going to have an increase in rates as well. So we've got this massive new tax. The government's saying it's to fund all of the emergency services. Now, the problem is this, right? The government's saying today in the budget that they're going to be in surplus, and yet just before the budget gets announced, or today it gets announced, they bring in this massive new tax. Now, this is a problem because my view is that Victorians are taxed enough already. The government has so much waste at the moment, and the idea that the only possible option is for them to introduce a new tax rather than looking at removing waste from other parts of government is just wrong, I think. And Victorians are being taxed enough. So I stood up today and gave a speech against it. Lots of other people are opposed to this. But the idea that we can just keep introducing tax after tax after tax after tax in Victoria, and somehow it will lead to prosperity and some sort of utopia in Victoria is totally wrong. It's never going to work, and so we have to push back against it.
Would you say, David, that Victorians are getting a bit of what they deserve, though? And I mean it in the most kindest terms possible, because Labor were voted in. Daniel Andrews was voted in again. A lot of this was kind of up there that these things would be happening. This firefighter union, I think in 2014 or 2016, they supported the Andrews government. So if you look back at the history of this, a lot of the same people have supported this very government, and now they're in a position and they're complaining about it. But isn't this kind of what Victorians voted for?
Yeah, well, elections have consequences, right? They trusted lots of people trusted the government. During the pandemic, you and I spoke a lot during the pandemic, and there was a lot of people opposed to what the government was doing. But there was also a lot of people that said, well, the government is keeping us safe, and they're doing the right thing, and they're doing all these wonderful things, so we should continue to support the government. And look, I don't think that Victorians deserve to be harmed like this. I would reject that idea. I think that they've been ripped off in some ways. They were promised one thing, and they've been given another. No one voted. This tax was never brought to the Victorian people and said, we're going to bring in this new tax on every ratepayer in Victoria, and if we win the election, we're going to bring in this new tax. That's not what happened at the last election. This new tax just came out of nowhere. They brought it in, and now everyone's forming their opinion on it, and pretty much everyone hates it.
I just want to go into watching your quick speech. It's just 2 minutes that you've put online, and for those of you at home, so the full. I've got a full report coming out tomorrow. But if you're on mine or Rukshan's YouTube, make sure to press that notification button. We are going live more often and including today. Today at the protest, we ran it live the whole time. So if you're around and you want to watch it unfold, and I thought it was a really good live stream today. So certainly, so subscribe and press that notification. Let's just watch your speech.
Victorians pay enough tax already. And do you feel like you get good value for money for those taxes that you pay? This government pisses away money on all sorts of waste. I was chair on the Commonwealth Games inquiry. They pissed away $589 million. And what did you get for it? Nothing. They made a promise before the last election that they would have all of these sporting events all in the regional areas. And then what happened after the election? They said it was too expensive. Too expensive. They knocked it on the head. And you know who benefit from that money? Your money. Glasgow. They sent the money to Glasgow. They didn't even give us free tickets for it. And now, when they don't have enough money, because they've pissed it all away, they use the good name of volunteers, of firefighters and everyone else to raise more taxes. And the idea that they couldn't find waste in other areas to pay for this is absolutely a lie. I made a promise as a Libertarian when I first got elected to Parliament that I would never vote for an increase in taxes. Last week at 2:30 in the morning, I kept that promise, and others should make that promise as well. Victorians are taxed enough. No more taxes. Thank you.
So I think a lot of people watching this would agree, but can you explain to us, because we understand, from what I understand, it was a deal between the Greens, Animal Justice, same characters every single time, Animal Justice,
and legalised cannabis as well.
Legalised cannabis.
Which hurts even more because Libertarians support legalising cannabis as well. We want to do it without communism, but it's really annoying that this state is held to ransom by the Greens. And I said in Parliament, in my speech in Parliament last week, that, the Greens act as if, they have to make this deal, otherwise Victoria will fall apart. Well, they could have just said no. And they didn't. They chose to support the government, enable the government to do this. If they had said no, the government would have had to look for other options. And those other options would have been removing waste throughout the public sector, which, I think anyone with half a brain in their head can look around and find all sorts of waste in the public sector. I named the obvious one, which was the Commonwealth Games, where they spent $589 million for absolutely nothing. But if you think that's the end of it, I don't think you're looking hard enough. There is a lot of waste in the public sector. Now, the government said today in their budget that, they're going to be removing waste from the public sector and this sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is that government is too big in Victoria. They should really focus on what's important, on the basic functions of government. But instead, they get their tentacles into every aspect of people's lives. And of course, that all costs money.
Yeah. One of the things, great points, Dave. One of the things one of the, I guess, most disgusting points about this whole tax is, and I know it's a tax on everyone, but it is also the volunteers who are volunteering to serve the Victorian community as firefighters who also have to pay this tax. So basically they're volunteering and being charged to volunteer, literally. And that just blows my mind that that's kind of the state that we live in where that's happening. And I think it's impacting morale. It's probably going to have effects on their reaction time to emergencies around the state. And I heard a lot of that throughout the radio interviews that people were giving, that they're having trouble keeping stations open or units open and getting more people and more members to join as volunteers for the firefighting service. So I think it's that disconnect between government, because on one end, Jacinta Allen says that she cares about all of these things, but on the other end, these actions kind of show the complete opposite. Is there a way that you can understand that disconnect, David, between, making volunteers pay for pretty much the service they provide for free, and Jacinta Allen saying that they're all about looking after these kind of services, because it doesn't seem to add up to me at all.
Yeah, well, I was at there's been lots of protests recently about this tax. There was one last Friday, another one on Tuesday last week, and then another one today. And I spoke to lots of people at these protests. A lot of farmers are also CFA volunteers because they care about their community. They want to join together to make sure that they've got fire protection for their properties to save life and property. And the issue is that they're having to pay this increase in taxes because they own farms. Now, the government said, oh, well, if you're a volunteer, you're not going to have to pay these taxes because there's going to be these rebates and stuff. But no one knows how that's actually going to work. And they don't trust the government. There's going to be all sorts of red tape and form filling involved in that. And they just don't trust the government anymore. So that's where it's at. Like the government saying, oh, well, there's nothing to worry about because the volunteers won't have to pay this. But it also sets up these crazy perverse incentives where if you're not a volunteer, maybe you want to sign up as a volunteer just to get the tax break, and then you're going to have to prove that you're a real volunteer. Like you can imagine the bureaucracy involved in that, and that's just more waste, more government waste. It's wrong what they're doing. They should be funding it out of consolidated revenue, and they should be able to look for other areas to cut spending so they can fund these essential services. I've seen like pictures of some of these trucks that the CFA use and professional firefighters. Like it's a joke. They do need extra equipment. Like these people put their lives on the line to look after Victorians' life and property. They need the best equipment and they don't have it. And their morale is being sapped by this government that just wants to use their name. They're using their brand. This is the reason that they came up with this tax, because the government thought that, who is going to protest against a tax to help emergency services? Like everyone loves firefighters, right? Who hates a firefighter? Who hates a CFA volunteer? Who hates a SES worker? No one in the state hates these people. So the government thought, well, if we come up with a tax and use their reputation to, levy this tax, then no one will oppose it. Well, the government's had a terrible shock because the very people whose names they were using to implement this tax and to use their brand to sell this tax are revolting against it, including the union itself. So it was very, very strange today to see, and at other protests, to see, the UFU, the United Firefighters Union, standing next to libertarians and the Liberal Party, protesting this tax. So it's a very unusual situation.
And even standing next to the CFA, there's been so much controversy in recent time about with all the deals that went on. But something I want to go back to that you said, because from what I understand from talking to some of the farmer volunteers today, they were saying that it's not only the forms you're going to have to fill, but when they dug into the details of it, there were so many conditions to it, including that it can be only on your primary residence, so one property per person. He says that just doesn't take into account that us farmers have multiple lots in which we do our farming. So the exemption is not going to actually protect us. We go and volunteer our time, and then we're going to have to pay for the privilege to do so, which is insane, which is what, Rukshan, you were talking about. But I don't even think that there is a real exemption for them fully.
Yeah, so lots of farmers, they don't just farm on their primary place of residence. Lots of farmers buy other lots close by and they'll farm on other paddocks. And another thing that was pointed out to me, some of those trucks that turned up earlier in the week, last week and on the Friday the week before, they were ex-CFA trucks. They weren't current CFA trucks. They were ex-CFA trucks. A lot of these farmers, what they've done is they've purchased old firefighting equipment and basically formed their own private brigades to protect each other's property. Now, they're not part of the CFA. They're not part of the professional firefighters. They're just farmers that have bought some secondhand equipment and they've sort of got an agreement together with each other that, if there's a fire, they're going to go and help each other out. And that's a great thing. That's like a great Australian thing. And it's wonderful that Australians are cooperating like this, forming together to, help protect each other's farms. But they're just totally left out of this. Like those guys that have done all that work and spent that capital, they're just totally ignored by this. So the government, is clearly out of touch with these people.
But I think you're bang on when you talk about it, as in the government just finding the perfect candidate to use in order to push through another tax, somebody that would be palatable to the public, or at least they think so, but they didn't realise the backlash that you're going to get. Another thing that I noticed, and again, anyone that was watching the live stream or that watches the report tomorrow will see, is that these volunteers and farmers, these are people that hardly come to the city, but a lot of them have never been to the city to protest ever about anything. It's the first time in their life that they're travelling here because they feel like this has gone way too far.
Well, I was listening to 3AW, I wasn't at the protest, but I was listening to it on the radio, and a lot of people were calling in from the rural areas, saying that they couldn't catch trains into the city.
They were stopped. I got the schedule.
They were stopped. There was apparently a fault. So a lot of people complain, and this is from all parts of regional Victoria, saying that the V lines have stopped working, and some people were even saying that, I know it's going down the level of conspiracy, but that
Peter Marshall, the secretary of the UFU, said that he believed that the government was sabotaging the regional trains to stop people from coming in. And if you looked at the schedule, it's funny because that's the unions, that's Labor's ally, but it's not such a big conspiracy, because if you look at the Ararat train to Southern Cross was delayed by 60 minutes at 6:13 a.m. The 6:56 Maryborough to Southern Cross was delayed by 44 minutes. The 7:45 Ballarat to Southern Cross was delayed by 80 minutes. The Bacchus Marsh at 8:12 was 80 minutes. There was something going on.
Technical issues.
Yeah, it's suddenly technical issues. And the fact that
that's what they said.
The fact that the unions themselves are saying it, I think carries a little bit more weight in this situation. Not that I believe the unions when they say things. I think in this case, when they're talking about, firstly, that they're involved with other unions, but also they are Labor's natural ally.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the case with the UFU and Labor at the moment. They're very upset. They're very upset with the Labor Party. But look, there was certainly disruptions with the train system this morning. What was the cause of that? I don't know. Well, I can only speculate. I've got lots of questions about that, and I intend to bring it up in Parliament next week, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, because I think, if they're stopping people coming into the city to
You're getting it in the comments. People are saying it.
Well, yeah, and I don't disbelieve that. I'd be if anyone wants to contact my office if they've got evidence of being stopped. I know I've spoken to other protest groups that wanted to come into the city and protest about other things that have been discouraged by police. So we'll wait and see what the truth is there. But you're dead right. Like a lot of these people, they're not activists. They're not people that protest, for no reason at all.
They're not like the guys you see every week who take the city hostage on every single issue that the government can't even do anything about. These are people that came to the city to bring their grievances to the Parliament House about the issue that the Parliament can and is doing something negative against them now. This is the exact thing that you should be supporting. This is what we need the right to protest in Australia for this specific thing. In other cases, you see people going every single week to be a nuisance for multiple, they're professional protesters. These guys are absolutely not.
Well, speaking of nuisance, Avi, I was watching your live stream on my drive, and I heard the
Jackie Dundee
people that was speaking. No. One of the people that was speaking, one of the Fire Party union people, was saying asking some of the fire trucks to be moved because the Victoria Police said they'd come and take them away. And I found that really interesting, because Victoria Police tolerate so many protests that block the roads and block the streets. But apparently today, just because these trucks are kind of in the way, we're going to go take them away. And I just find that very interesting, because I think Victoria Police tolerates a lot of protests every weekend.
Yeah,
and this one is not something that happens every week. This is just a very unique protest with the fire services being involved. And I just found that interesting that they were threatening to have the. Was anything removed? I didn't get to watch the whole stream.
We didn't actually see it because it was down Flinders Street and where's that? You know the T intersection to go to that car park for Fed Square.
Oh,
They-
okay, yeah, I know the one.
They dumped them there. And we actually, because we were walking up from there and we saw them guys, they're like, oh yeah, we just dumped our trucks there. Yeah, no, F them, but it was before we started our live stream, and then they tried to get them to move. But you saw the crowd's reaction as in, nah, screw you. But most of the guys that were going there were saying, we don't want to interrupt the city. We don't want to be an inconvenience. We just want to be heard. We just want people to take note and realize, the multiple levels of this threat, like to food security, to the fact that this is going to drive up the cost of living, plus the craziness that they're targeting volunteers. They're charging us to volunteer, and also in the case where they're charging those who have who have gone out of their way to buy the equipment to do it themselves without even being official volunteers.
Yeah, look, it's I think that the police were very good in the way that they dealt with this protest today. Clearly, these people weren't going to cause trouble, right? Just due to the numbers, they were going to block streets. They weren't doing it to piss off the people of Melbourne. In fact, Peter Marshall was, and the other union guys, they were saying, listen to police instructions. We want this crowd to disperse peacefully. They didn't want any trouble. They wanted people to cooperate with the police. So, I didn't see any police trouble whatsoever. I thought it was, very well run.
Let me ask you: Did Peter Marshall in the last election? Did they? I know they were talking about it, but in the last election, did they actually push their members to vote against Labor at the end, or were they just threatening that? Do you remember?
Well, they were. Look, I don't want to get too much into the history of it, but they have been very close to the Greens in the past. And I don't know whether you've seen that open letter by Peter Marshall to the leader of the Victorian Greens. If you haven't seen that, I'm happy to send you a copy of it. But it basically, I think from memory, he called the Greens the artificial lung of a dying Labor government. And I get the feeling that they felt...
I'm starting to like this guy more.
Well, I get the feeling that they felt that the Greens were going to support their cause. And in the end, the Greens did a deal. And he announced in that letter that the UFU will have no further association with the Greens whatsoever. So they're very upset with the Greens party. It's an interesting...
But in the last election, who did they tell their membership to vote?
I don't know who.
Because I remember there was that fight at the time with Dan Andrews, and I remember they were threatening it, but I can't remember off the top of my head if they actually told people to vote the Liberals. Anyways, we'll move on. For those of you viewing at home, if you're just tuning in, welcome. David Limbrick is with us. We've got a bit to unpack tonight. If you're new here, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you do get the lives, including lives from on the streets now. I'm probably doing one live a day nowadays. And we're going to read all your super chats as they come through. I'm putting up comments. I'm trying to multitask here because Rukshan gave up on technical support the minute India and Pakistan went to war. So now it's stuck with Israel to take over and
very
keep
busy.
the peace here. So I got
to make sure the nukes don't go off, man. I got to make sure the nukes don't go off. So that's my main responsibility.
Guys, and it's up to you guys at home also to share it far and wide. We've got almost 5,000 we're hitting live. So thank you to everyone for tuning in and make sure to share it. For the first super chat of the night, which I think is a good segue into my next topic, is from Julian. Rukshan, this is your one job.
Yeah, Julian, thanks for the super chat, mate. David, a libertarian / national coalition. How about that? Is that what they said? Never or never say never. That is a good segue.
Libertarian National Coalition. Look, I like the Nats. I like the Nats. I think that they've got a really good brand in regional Victoria. I think that they're a pretty professional operation, but a lot of what they support, I would classify as like agrarian socialism, quite different from the libertarian point of view. So I'm not sure that's going to happen, but good luck to them in what they're doing at a federal level, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
they've got a really good brand. Like
Yeah.
lots of people in regional areas just love them.
Yeah, and I think this is like probably a massive news story today that kind of overshadowed everything else when this came out, and I think caught a few people off by surprise. Like, it's been talked about, but you kind of never believed it would happen. But just hearing that it happened, and I remember calling you after you had no idea because you were still.
I was at the protest. In fact, I was so
at the
shocked.
protest.
I was shocked because I'd just seen. I know it's the state Liberal and Nationals. They were like they had branding on stage together, and as they were doing that on the stage at this protest that we're talking about today, there was a breakup in the Nationals and Liberals in the federal politics.
Yeah, no more coalition. So
look how
is pretty
sad
big
they
news.
both look.
But if you look into the details of this and how they've both, I watched both the press conferences and how they frame it, like, it's like one of these kind of, it's almost like they're in an open relationship now, and it's not a clearly defined relationship. The doors are open; they can go in and out. They might get together again. It's not fully. It's like a trial separation.
It's a trial separation, but it's pretty big news. It's 81 years.
It's big news.
First time in 81 years that they broke up, according to Drew Pavlo, which I dare say he's probably right about that. Do you think, David, that's something that could end up happening here, or it's really just a federal?
Look, I don't know. They came out this morning at a media conference and they were all mates and basically brushed all that off. So, they're obviously...
Okay, be honest with us. Have the Libertarians been sleeping with the Nationals, and that's what actually caused the breakup?
No. Well, it wasn't me anyway, if it was. No is the case.
You don't fancy Brad Batten?
No. So I would say this about the Nats: the way that they operate.
Oh wait, no,
the way that
I don't even know who the national leader is. Yeah, who's the national leader? It's the guy that was on stage with
Brian. But in Victoria, yeah. But look, they have a very different way of operating. They have a different way of communicating. Their brand is different. Like, frankly, they seem far more professional than the Liberal Party, far more united. If they have fights, they seem to keep them behind closed doors, unlike the Liberal Party. And the Nationals are much more pleasant to deal with from an outsider's point of view. But, like, I don't have any insight into what goes on internally into the Nats or Libs, so I don't really know what's going on internally. I just see it from an outsider's point of view. I see the Liberal Party as all over the place, and I don't really know what they stand for. But I look at the Nats and I go, well, you guys are looking out for country folk, and that seems like a reasonable thing to do, considering that's your party. And lots of people seem to like them. So, I mean, I can only comment from an outsider's point of view there.
Well, we appreciate your perspective, and the fact is you've given me another segue into something else that I've prepared, because I know how much you like to talk about the Liberal Party, but more about how they tend to fight openly between them. It's quite public, and nothing more public than the Moira Deeming and John Pizzuto episode. I just want to watch with you a part of Q&A last night, which I think there's a few things to unpack there that seem super bizarre on the ABC that no one seems to be talking about. Let me bring it up here. Have a listen. And I'm starting a bit earlier because I think what she says is important. The Liberal Party has a lot of work to do, not just in representation, of course, but in actually speaking to women and the issues that they care about and addressing them substantively. And they've been punished for not doing that.
Our next question comes from Adeline James.
So I don't know who was that. Do you guys know who that was?
No.
Anyways, somebody important, because she was on Q&A. That's only important people. But the reason why I left that first comment in, because she says that the problem with the Liberal Party is that they're not listening to women enough, and they've been silencing women, and even within their own party, I think earlier she says.
Question is for John Pizzuto. Do you think the Liberal Party is hemorrhaging votes due, in large part, to the lack of empathy and tolerance for female dissenters within the party ranks? I'm talking specifically about the witch hunt against Moira Deeming and the lack of accountability you have demonstrated when dealing with female people in your own party.
Thank you, John. And of course, John, you know, the costs for your case, for your defamation case to Moira Deeming were settled last week. That's $2.3 million. So this has been on the agenda, but there are clearly women who are disappointed with how you've dealt with it.
Yeah. Before we hear his answer, David, do you find it as satisfying as I do to just watch him having to squirm through that question on a national broadcaster after losing his defamation case, after being smashed with a $2.3 million bill?
Well, I don't find any of this satisfying, I've got to be honest. I wish that it never went to that point. It's shocking to me that it ever got to court, and I wish that it had been dealt with differently right from the start, because the issues that those women were talking about way back in 2023, and I was there at that protest, like I'm at most protests, and those issues that they were talking about never got a good airing in media. All that was talked about was, you know, Nazis and this internal Liberal Party stuff. And I just think it was a massive wasted opportunity, and I'm really disappointed with everything that's happened ever since. So, yeah.
But surely after the way they dragged it through the mud for just attending to the same protest that you attended, and him being in the leadership position of the Liberal Party, acting like he's more powerful than thou, abusing his power in that case, surely now you find it satisfying that he had to confront it straight up. I get it. None of it was satisfying from the beginning, but since what happened, come on. Rukshan definitely is loving it.
I don't think there's any winners here. I don't think there's any winners here. Like Moira, look, I'll declare my conflict here. I'm friends with Moira, and I'm actually a big fan of hers, and I share many, especially what she's doing on women's issues. I agree with her on many things and have fought many of the same issues. But nonetheless, I don't think that it's a good outcome that the whole focus of this is a member of parliament being potentially bankrupted by a defamation case that didn't really air these issues the way that they should have been aired. I'd rather people be talking about the actual policy issues and not this internal politics within the Liberal Party that, frankly, I don't think many people care about.
I agree with you, David, to an extent. Like Avi said, I do have a bit of satisfaction around this whole thing, but I'm coming more from the perspective of Victorians looking from the outside inwards in what happens there. And just the way that Moira Deeming, as a representative of women at the women's rally, was treated by her own leader, John Pizzuto, who I think, she gave him plenty of opportunities throughout that entire time period, even almost before all this kind of court stuff really took off, to apologize, to even have a smaller payment, whatever it is. I think she gave plenty of opportunities, but he never took that opportunity. And I think as a leader, he could have been the bigger man in this instance and swallowed his pride and come to terms with the fact that
100%.
once you watch all the footage and you see all the evidence of everything, and I was there as well, I put in an affidavit for that with my live stream footage. I saw the whole thing take place. So for me, like, I knew all these were lies, and it's just complete nonsense watching these highly educated men. I think John Pizzuto is a lawyer as well, going out. I think that makes it worse.
Lawyer.
Yeah, that makes it worse. His payment should be
Is he a defamation lawyer?
Apparently.
I believe so, yeah.
Well,
so he should be
imagine
paying
hiring that
more.
flop.
That's why he's being charged more, I reckon. But,
No wonder why he became a politician, because he sucked at being a lawyer.
Yeah.
Look,
so
I've said at the time, what should have happened, what I would have liked to have seen happen is, maybe they could have said, well, this wasn't organized very well, and it's awful that these Nazi guys turned up. But the actual issues are real issues that we should be discussing, and they're X, Y, and Z. That's what I would have liked to have seen him do at the time. They didn't do that. They felt scared that the Labor Party was going to call them names. The Liberal Party's had this thing for years where as soon as they get a threat that the Labor Party's going to start calling them names, they just like fold like a deck of cards and throw anyone under the bus that might cause them trouble. And in this case, it was Moira. I think it was disgusting the way that it all played out. I think it's terrible. But even worse than that, it sort of hindered this discussion of real issues that Moira was bringing up, and many of those women were bringing up that I think deserve airing, and they're real issues that are deserving of having a public, a sensible discussion about. And that was like, just thrown away. None of the media reported on that. No one wanted to talk about that. Everyone just wanted to talk about, Nazis and internal stuff in the Liberal Party. And I think that's a real shame.
But even this year, David, like we were at the same rally this year, that women held a rally this year as well. Again, there's no one there from the Liberal Party whatsoever this time. Like they're probably terrified to turn up just in case of all the optics of it. So isn't that a problem with the whole Liberal Party movement that, you have someone like yourself, a libertarian, you go to all types of different protests, based on your convictions and your issues, and you want to listen to people, even if you don't agree with them, you want to hear what they have to say. The Liberal Party in Victoria, and probably federally as well, when it comes to this particular issue with women and their rights, they don't want to even be near it. And the only one that really took a stand has been really Moira Deeming, who's really gone all in there, and then she got vilified for it. So now that conversation that you're talking about having about what's happening with women is not really happening in the Liberal Party, besides people like Moira bringing it up. Isn't that the case anyway? So it was never going to happen.
It's not happening in the Liberal Party at all. Like, Moira is back in the Liberal Party now. She was talking about it when she was on the crossbench. I actually quite enjoyed working with her on the crossbench, but now that she's in the Liberal Party, I can't really do a lot. And, I'm just sort of doing my own thing, and it's not ideal. Like I think the view within the Liberal Party is that they want to talk about mainstream everyday issues and follow the polls of what people think are important. In my view, that's not leadership. In my view, leadership is about bringing people along and pointing out issues and making them mainstream. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what leadership should be about. And that's what I've been trying to do, is to try and make this issue about women's rights a mainstream issue. We've had some success in the mainstream media. We got a documentary published on Channel 7. We've had some success in some other articles and things, but it's.
Did he just freeze on us?
I think he's been taken out. Liberal Party came in and took him out.
Wow.
He is in Parliament. He'll call back.
We'll see. He'll call back in. While he does that, I'll read this.
Hey, Diego, thanks for the super chat. Antarctica is starting to look appealing. I need a good penguin recipe. Well, it's not that far from the coast of Victoria. It is probably close to us, so that is a refuge, perhaps, if you want to get away completely from Australia and go after the penguins.
Let's just wait for him to call back in. Hopefully he just clicks through that link and he knows.
But that was an interesting view, actually, from David about that, like from that side of the fence, like seeing a member of Parliament obviously potentially becoming bankrupted because of the politics of they're carrying out. Politicians should have consequences, because if another member of the public did that to John Pizzuto, he would go after them. And he would 100%. Not. I don't think he would care about the fact that he was going to bankrupt them or not.
100%.
And he was being completely backed by people
like
Jeff
back.
Kenner. Welcome back.
I don't know why there is a sound effect.
Can you hear me now?
My mic.
Yes, you're back in. Sorry, you froze on us. I don't know what's going on. There's a hidden sound.
I don't know. Parliament must have been on to me, but I've managed to bypass it, so it's all good.
Okay, so I just wanted to stop there. Let's go back and let's finish watching this, just so you can help me unpack something that I think is very odd in this whole story on ABC.
Thank you for your question, Adeline, and I'm happy to address it. The issue over which I took action back in March 2023, and there is a bit of a background to this, so I hope you'll forgive me for addressing some of it.
It sounds like
was one that was undertaking, understanding that there are divided views over how we mediate between competing rights when it comes to gender identity and equality before the law. My concern which echoes some of the sentiments I expressed a few moments ago, was about, at the time, trying to position the party as a party that's broad-based. We'd just had 3 election losses, thumping election losses, and that's what I was trying to do. And whilst I was acting in good faith, Adeline, I do accept now, and I acknowledge that I could have handled that situation better. I was early in my leadership, no excuse, but I don't go by a day where I don't think about what I could have done differently or better. And I'm better for the reflection, not happy with the results, but I do accept that I could have handled things a bit better. But I want all of you to know, and in particular you, Adeline, to understand and hopefully at least appreciate that I was always trying in the best of faith to make sure the party can appeal broadly in the community. We keep losing people. And so I'm trying to bring them back to the party. I could have done that better, and I accept that.
Yeah.
But before I just, because that's not even the bit that it was what Dave Sharma kind of says next that threw me, and the fact that no one picked up on it, and ABC host didn't pick up on it. But even that, it's, if you watch the actual trial, that's a complete lie. He made it clear throughout the trial that the reason why he went so hard on her, or from his perspective at the time, was he was scared of what Dan Andrews was going to do with it. He was being led by the Labor Party. It had nothing to do about coming to the centre or bringing more people in. It was 100% because he was scared of Dan Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not the first time at all. Like, the fracking ban was a good one in the last term of Parliament. They brought up this fracking ban, which was already legislated. It was already Liberal Party policy to oppose fracking, but the Labor Party wanted to put it in the Constitution, which, you know, people have varying views on whether that's even constitutionally valid in Victoria. I don't think it is valid. But the Liberal Party supported it just because if they didn't support it, then Labor would be able to call them names and all this sort of stuff, even though their policy was against fracking. They do this all the time. You know, they look, we'll wait and see what happens with the new leader, but certainly they've been had a very weak point in when the Labor comes out and wants to call them names. They act very quickly to neutralise that through means that would not be supported by their base, I would imagine.
Yeah, and like dirty tactics as well, like the whole Wikipedia thing, the fake dossier, the fact that they went to so much effort to create all this material and kind of, you know, help the media misinterpret it by the way that they put it all together, just shows you how nefarious the whole operation was. So again, I want to reiterate, I have no positive energy towards John Pizzuto when it comes to this. And I actually don't feel sorry for him, because I watched that entire trial, all of it. I watched all the testimony from David Southwick. We
watched it on holiday together.
We watched it on holiday in Bali, sitting poolside. That's what we were doing, to the dismay of our partners. And like the way that they were speaking, the language that they were using, and the tactics that they tried, I think, you know, this is a just outcome that a lot of people, especially women in Victoria, who support Moira Deeming and, you know, women's rights, will be very happy with. Because if he got away with this, and just with a slap on the wrist, I think it wouldn't have been fair. I think this is actual justice. And the point I was making before, it was a whole Liberal Party machine that came after Moira, Jeff Kennett, all these guys putting money behind John Pizzuto and fully pushing him and supporting him in this endeavour. At none of those points did those people stand back and say, hey, John, let's not do this. Let's just sort this out. Yes, you'll have to apologise, but you can keep going. Nah. They went all in, and now he's paying the consequences for it, and no one should feel sorry for him, and that's my opinion. I'm a good guy. I'm a reasonably good guy. I don't want to wish harm on anyone, but I think if anyone deserves this kind of punishment, I think it's John Pizzuto in this instance.
Well, look, I'd make the point that look, I was paying attention to that trial as well. It was of interest to many people. But ultimately, my job is to promote the views of the Libertarian Party, not the Liberal Party. And we have very clear views on this. Like, our policies are very clear on this. We understand what a man and a woman is. We understand that there's conflicts of rights. And we're one of the very few parties that actually have published policies on this issue. And I think that our policies are very reasonable and in line with what people would expect when trying to protect the rights of all Victorians, including not just women, but also people that identify as trans. We want to protect the rights of all Victorians, and we think that we've struck the right balance. And that's my job to promote my party and what we think. You know, if the Liberal Party doesn't want to make a stand on this and doesn't want to take a position because they think it's too controversial, well, my advice to Victorian people is don't vote for a party that won't make a clear position on something that you actually care about.
Yeah, great point. I think I could just add to that and say if the party doesn't know what a woman is, you probably shouldn't be voting for them. That's a very clear way to vote, I reckon.
I'm just tweeting out this breaking news. Somebody, we can't mention his name on some of these platforms in England, is coming home. He has officially been released. You can check out for those details on my X, or I've retweeted Ezra Levant, who is there covering that trial, and one that Rebel has been covering from the beginning, including and late being funded in part, in a big part, especially some of the later things with by Elon Musk himself. So there's some good news there. A friend of mine, somebody that you're not allowed to mention his name on some of these platforms. So we'll just, that was some good breaking news in the middle. Let's finish this. I want to get to what I wanted to bring up.
Dave Sharma, I mean, obviously, you know, that's a situation, thanks Adeline, that played out in Victoria, but on those issues where there's a tension very deeply inside the party, you know, what are the lessons of how to manage those sorts of tensions?
Well, look, if you have a broad-based political movement, a party, a government, as John said, you're going to have people of different views and differences of opinion about how to handle certain issues, how to respond to certain challenges to society. I think the challenge is to have a pretty robust and forthright debate internally, but to not allow those to spill out into the open too publicly. And that's a difficult balance as a political movement, right? To have contestation of ideas internally, but without giving the appearance of disunity or fragmentation externally.
Well, John has to pay $2.3 million. I mean, that's a court ruling. That's a lot of money. Should the Liberal Party be stumping up for that? Awkward question, but I need you to answer.
Well, look, it's not for me to say, but I'm not particularly comfortable with public figures and politicians and elected representatives suing one another for defamation. I think it can have a chilling effect on political debate. I think if you're hit with a cost order like John has been, that is, you know, life-altering. I mean, it's bankrupting in many respects. And public figures, public officials expect to get criticism in the media. I mean, you know, I don't know, there's probably hundreds of potential defamation actions I could launch against people.
Sure, but there was a particular comparison. I'm not going to, you know, it's been gone through the courts, but obviously Moira Deeming and her supporters, you know, were pretty outraged about that comparison. I mean, that's what that was about.
Yeah, but she had a public platform and access to all the media to air that outrage, and I think that's how public figures should behave. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't propose to ever sue any other political figure, whatever they said about me, because I have an ability to respond. I have access to the media. I have a voice. If you do this, it becomes a test of sort of material means that you can silence someone else's opinion because of the weight of resources you can bring to bear on something. I find it uncomfortable.
Can I just make a quick point?
So, just before, I don't even need to listen to John Pesito again execute his position in the most gross way. I'm happy to watch it if you want to watch it. My point is, what Dave Sharma, the problem that I have with what he said there is that this wasn't just a difference of opinion. And the part that I'm shocked that the or am I shocked? The hypocritical ABC didn't bring up, especially after the comments from the previous woman on their panel, their lefty kind of take that the Liberal Party isn't giving women voices enough, they're silencing women and all that, is that there's a clear power balance. You guys go on about power balance of women. You had a power balance of the gang of men, but also the leader of the party kicking out this woman, demonizing her in the media. This was not like a fair fight where Moira could go out to the media. He's like, she had a platform, she could go to the media and defend. It's like she was painted as a kook. as a racist Nazi kook. That's how they painted her, and it was all coming from him. So there was no ability for her to fairly go out and prosecute her case. And the fact that the ABC sat there, if it was anyone else, if it happened on the left, if it happened in the Labor Party, if it happened in the Liberal Party to someone who was pushing a left-wing cause or idea, something that they perceive on their side, they would not have let Dave Sharma get away with that statement. The fact that you mentioned just now, Rukshan, Jeff Kennett was part of that pile-on. There was such an imbalance of power in where she sat that her only course of action was to go to the court and destroy him. Now he's sitting there with his head down in shame. And half of it is that he's in pain that he got caught and lost. He does not... If he didn't lose that case, he would have never regretted the way he handled it.
No way. 100%.
Look, I mean, what I'd say, look, how these power imbalances, like obviously Moira, once she was kicked out of the party, had a power imbalance, right? She didn't have a platform and stuff. But like, I didn't shy away from allying with Moira on a number of issues, including some of the issues that she was passionate about and brought up at the Let Women Speak rally. So, I did what I could to try and say, well, I don't think that what Moira was doing or what she said was wrong. I think that it was portrayed poorly and negatively. And I think that, many of the issues that she brought up and was trying to prosecute were entirely valid, and I agree with her on it. So, look, I mean, I can only operate from within the sphere of influence that I have. And within that, I said, well, I like Moira. I agree with her on many issues, and I cooperated with her on many things whilst she was on the crossbench.
Yeah, but you're one of the good ones. You're one of the good ones. How many good ones are there in the Vic Parliament?
Just
there's a couple. There's a couple.
There's a One Nation. Who else do we have?
Look, I like Jeff Borman.
Is he an independent or is he?
No, he's Shooters, Farmers and Fishers. I get along with him really well. There's a few good guys in the Liberal Party. There's even a few good guys in the Labor Party, believe it or not.
Okay, mate, we're going to have to kick you off stream if you start talking mad.
Well, like Labor's interesting. They're a hugely diverse organisation. The one thing that they have that's very different to the Liberal Party is they have very strict discipline. So, people in the Labor Party might very much strongly disagree with what their leadership's doing, and they have their arguments behind closed doors, but when they come out in public, they all lock ranks and they show solidarity, and like that's one of their core beliefs. And if you break solidarity...
You know who else does that?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of other groups.
The Communist Party of China is great like that too.
Yeah, they all do that, yeah. But Liberal go to the other extreme, and the slightest disagreement, and they'll be leaking it whilst they're.
I know, but the idea behind that is that we have a robust democracy where we can actually have individual, perspective and ideas, and it should be challenged in the public square. And you're right, it works to our detriment, and it's a bit like democracy itself, like. People that hate our democracy use our democracy against us to push their undemocratic worldview. Like it's a problem.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I mean, like each party, they sort of have their own culture, I suppose, and the way they deal with these problems. But like the Liberal and Labor parties, they're massive organisations, very diverse, and they deal with their problems very, very differently. So yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on from John Pesito, and even though we see there that he's got great funding from the woke, that's probably why the ABC's not really pushing on the issues that they can. I can't believe Simon Holmes. So,
are we sure that's true? Because like on those GoFundMes, you can sort of just type in
put anyone's name,
and like I went through the list the other night, and like
there's a dude, Sky is also
Seymour Butts. Seymour Butts had made a $5
sure.
donation.
No. I know. Okay, Sky News is saying it is too. So it wasn't just a Rebel News thing. I don't know. I didn't write this article. I don't know whether it was.
Did they contact you for advice, Harvey, for fundraising? Because you're one of the pros. Did they contact you?
I'm the king. I can't believe that they don't have John Basuto's gotojail.com.
.com.
Let's see if he made any comment. Did he make a comment?
It's $500. Like, that's not a joke, donation.
No, he did give it. He confirmed it. It says here. It's
right.
confirmed.
Okay. Well, you know.
You'd be very proud.
I'm just wondering why he's such a tight ass. He gave $500 a day to these Teals that lost their.
It's like small change to him, I suppose. So.
No, it was confirmed. Yeah, so he did give it to him, but it is interesting because it kind of does show you. To me, maybe you take it differently. The way I look at that is the Teals look at someone like John Pasuto as one of theirs, and I think he is. I think he is more of a Teal than a real conservative.
He's like a Turnbull, yeah. He's got that kind of thing on him, like just can't shake it. That he's a bit different.
I have a sort of, I don't know. My view on the Teals is effectively their role is to promote corporate welfare for a particular industry. That's basically all they're in Parliament for. And if it was any other industry, there would be absolute outrage that there are MPs elected simply to push, corporate welfare for a particular industry. But because it's a renewables industry, people just give it a pass for some weird reason. I don't know. But basically their role is to push for corporate welfare, and they do it very well.
Yeah, it's pretty
super
accurate.
chat for you a relevant super chat for you, Rukshan, to read out.
ARS 1000 from Andrew M. John Pasuto doesn't deserve GoFundMe donations for his stupidity of defaming Moira Deeming. I agree, mate. I definitely
absolutely agree. I think it's insane that people are
We
donating.
should take that GoFundMe. We should take that GoFundMe and also give that to Moira Deeming, I reckon.
How much is John Pasuto on in... how much do they get paid?
Well, it depends
opposition
on
leader
whether
gets a bit
you're
more.
a shadow minister and stuff. So I don't actually know what he's getting paid at the moment, but whatever it is, it's not enough to cover, because the $2 million or whatever it is that's been getting quoted, they're not counting the $300,000 damages plus his own legal fees.
Sure.
Which I don't know what that is, but let's guesstimate.
But sure, that's not going to put you. They say it's going to make you bankrupt. Surely he has more. He has more assets than $2.5 million. He's
plus another $2 million for your own fees.
I guess.
Well, look, I don't know. I don't know how wealthy a man he is, but if I was hit with a $4 million bill, I'd be bankrupt, and I would imagine most other MPs would be bankrupt.
Sure. No, you're right. Now that I think of it, he was a defamation lawyer, and that's the way he operates. So he probably wasn't very rich. In fact, that's why he probably joined things. But I honestly, I feel zero sympathy for him. I think he absolutely brought it on himself. I'm sorry. I just can't feel bad for someone that was happy to destroy someone like Moira's life. He was happy for that to happen to her. He was happy to bankrupt her in it. So I don't have any sympathy. But I get it. You're a better person than me and maybe Rukshan. Rukshan's pretending like he's not as happy as I am. I'm just not pretending. Rukshan acts like...
happy. I'm very happy.
Very happy. Say it again. Say it while you're big.
I'm very happy. I think it should be triple the amount that he has to pay.
I think...
And the Liberal Party as well. Jeff Kennett, they should have to pay. Jeff Kennett should have to pay. All these guys should have to pay just for being idiots.
Yep.
Wasting everyone's time.
And I hope Moira uses the money to have a massive party.
I hope I'm invited. That'd be cool.
I know. Imagine the party, Moira's party, and we can... Yeah. Do you reckon if it's like a dress-up party, I can go there dressed up as a girl, just for bands?
Oh, geez, you're pushing your luck, mate. I wouldn't do that. I did make a joke that I could maybe just identify as a woman and be the first. I could maybe change laws really quickly if I just started using the women's toilets at Parliament. But my wife put the kibosh on that. She wasn't real happy on me doing that. So anyway. Wasn't worth a divorce case. You know,
Rukshan?
people reckon defamation's expensive. Like divorce
Yeah.
is way worse, apparently.
You don't want to do like a trial separation like the Liberals and the Nationals.
Oh,
Stu, thanks for the super chat. Yay, about time. Good on ya. Not sure what that's in
I'm
reference
not. I
to.
can't. I don't know
but
what it
yeah.
was in reference to, but thank you for the
Thanks,
super
mate.
chat, mate. Guys, you can super chat on Rukshan on my YouTubes, and make sure hit the notification, the subscribe buttons. Welcome to the 6528. I think that's not including Rumble, but let's move on to the next issue. For you, David. I saw this post of yours, and I actually absolutely agreed with it, because I, like you, I have been very vocal, even though it's done in my name. I've been very vocal against these laws that banned any sort of imagery. I think it's ridiculous for whatever. Like, I don't think we need to prosecute that again. But I do also agree with you that since those who pushed for this legislation now should be held accountable for it, because I said this from the beginning when they were proposing all this legislation in the name of the Jewish community, I was screaming from the rooftop saying two things. I said, one, I guarantee you they're not going, like, to the Jewish community, to the organizations that were promoting it, I was saying, I guarantee you when the time comes, they're not actually going to use it to really protect you against the people we're worried about. And let me tell you a little secret, like, those cosplay Nazis are the least of the worries for most of the Jewish community. The real worry are some of these Islamists and some of these, these far left-wing nutcases that we've seen come out since October 7. And I said to them, they're not going to use it against the people because that's their political allies. It just never ends up being used against them. It's always used against the low-hanging fruit, which are those cosplay Nazis and whatever. Like, I got no sympathy for those guys either. But the point is, they're not the scary guys that people are losing sleep over in the Jewish community. And the Greens really pushed it. And now when it's their allies, because they're going to excuse it. Oh, and the second point that I made back then as well was, if we start banning things like the swastika, then when the Greens get into power, or when they hold the balance of power and they convince the Labour Party Israel's so evil or whatever, they're going to turn the Israeli national flag into a banned symbol as well. Like, where does that line? That's what's going to happen. So that's the direction we're going. So I had those two problems. Now the first one has come to fruition because here we have a swastika that from people that I guarantee you that the Greens don't even find offensive. Those, like, most of the Greens wouldn't find that sign offensive because they say, oh, you're misreading it. Well, there's a blatant swastika, and I do agree with you that they should be held accountable. But tell us what made you get to this position and add any thoughts to it.
Well, there's an ironic segue here in that the Nazi swastika ban and the salute ban were a direct knee-jerk reaction from the previous Premier, Dan Andrews, to the Let Women Speak rally. Now, the Nazis that did turn up there, they did do the Nazi salute thing, but they didn't use the swastika symbol at all. In fact, their movement in Victoria, as far as I'm aware, has never used that symbol. They have their own symbology. So this was like the Labor Party imagining what Nazis are, totally demonstrating how out of touch they are with actually what's going on. And I brought this up many times. I said, this is ridiculous. You're setting the precedent of banning symbols and gestures. And this is going to not work out the way that you want, right? Then they brought in these social cohesion laws. Again, I said, this is not going to work out the way that you want. These sort of Nazi groups are going to work their way around it. In fact, they go out of their way not to break the law unless they're making a point out of it to make themselves a martyr, which is the last thing that anyone that wants to fight against this actually wants. And I said to the Greens, I said, you guys are going to be the first people, they're going to be, your supporters are going to be the first people that are prosecuted under these laws, right? And the Greens actually held back a bit, right? On the social cohesion laws, the Greens freaked out a bit. They thought, shit, maybe the Libertarians are right. Anyway, so we had our first prosecution under the Nazi salute laws, And exactly what I said would happen happened. One of the Nazi guys became a martyr, and they're using it for recruiting and all this sort of stuff. And it's an absolute disaster. Totally counterproductive, right? Hasn't helped fight right-wing extremism or anti-Semitism one bit. In fact, quite the opposite. And now we have a situation where someone's used the Nazi symbol in conjunction with the Star of David in a protest. I've looked at the laws. I don't see an exception for these guys. Look, maybe the courts can fight it out. Maybe they can argue in a court why Jews are actually Nazis. I don't think I'd like to make that argument in a court. But nevertheless, they've made the laws. They should apply them equally. I'll be pushing this very hard. But the police have put out a statement saying that they're actually investigating it. I don't know whether that's lip service or not. We'll find out. But Parliament's on next week. I'll be doing what I can to make sure that this is investigated properly. And if these people have broken the law, then they should face the consequences of that. And the consequences of this, as was supported by the Greens, is 12 months jail. So they could be putting their own supporters into jail for up to 12 months because they used a way of demonstrating that wasn't supported by the law in Victoria.
Have you actually spoken to anyone from the Greens about this since this story broke?
No.
I'm really interested to know how they feel about it now. Do you think that they've got
I can make a guess. They could probably say that those bastard libertarians were right again, and I wish they'd shut up. But that's probably what they're thinking. But I warned them. I said to them straight up, you guys, your supporters are going to be victims of this. And, I said to them, it's all going to be run out of the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission office. This is like the non-crime offences that were under the Social Cohesion Act. I said, we could have a Liberal government next year. I mean, who knows? I might not get re-elected, and maybe I'll apply for the role of Human Rights Commissioner. I could be running the show. And I sort of saw the blood run from their face a bit when I said that. But it's the truth, right? When you make laws, you're not making them just for the current government and the current situation. Yeah. You're making them for every future government. And so when you make a law, you got to think about how could this law be used by someone that I really hate, right? And if it could be used in a way by someone that you really hate, maybe you shouldn't be supporting that law. I made that point very clear to them. They went ahead anyway, and now, we're suffering the consequences of that.
In a lot of these laws, like that nuance is, I think, missed. When it comes to laws around free speech, censorship, I think we missed that nuance that you're talking about, David, which is so important that as governments change, then, the application of those laws and the interpretations can change with that. But in Victoria, it's been an ongoing issue, this kind of two-tier justice when it comes to the way different groups are treated for breaking, these, even if they're frivolous laws, whatever we think of the rules, there is that troubling aspect in Victoria. And I think a lot of the public actually feels that, and they really, it really impacts their relationship with law enforcement as well. So I think it does a lot of damage beyond just someone using a symbol. The fact that these things aren't prosecuted in a fair and equal way further damages our very kind of, edgy relationship that we have with law enforcement and the justice system. So I think it's very important, despite, our disagreement with what this law is, that these people are found and, applied the same standard, because that's the only way that we can, say that we're in a just and equal society. And, perhaps in the future, other governments will wind these things back and see common sense. But as it is now, I agree with the sentiments that both of you have echoed on this.
Yeah, a fundamental principle here is equality under the law. If you're going to make laws, then everyone should be held to account by those laws equally. And I oppose the laws. I think they're stupid. I think they're counterproductive. But they're the law now. And if the government's going to have these laws, they can't just pick and choose who they're going to prosecute with them.
Well, they usually do. That's the problem.
Well, they often do. And we'll wait and see. We have, a new Attorney General now. We're going to have a new Police Commissioner soon. Things are changing. I don't know. I don't know. I seriously don't know what's going to happen here. But I think that the government is sincere in their concern about the rise in anti-Semitism. I think the opposition is sincere in their concern about the rise of anti-Semitism. I'm concerned about it as well. I just think that their approach is counterproductive
I'm
and
with you.
is not the
I
right
am
way,
with you
not the right way to go
100%.
about it. And the way that they use the Jewish community and they present them as if they're one homogenous block and don't have differing beliefs. Like there's many Jewish people in my party who are very against having their religion used to take away people's rights. They're very upset about it. And, I'm very sympathetic to that. And the idea that the government just uses religions like this, same way as they use the emergency services to bring in this tax, they just present them all as if they all have the same belief. But it's not true. And it's the same of any religious group. They're all very diverse, not just Jewish people. You talk to Buddhist people, Christians, they all have very diverse views. And to say we're going to protect these people by bringing in these authoritarian laws and say we're protecting everyone in this community, and there's people in that community that are going to really resent that because they don't like their religion or their belief or their organization being used to take away other people's rights. They don't want that to happen. They don't want their religion or their belief or their organizations to be used like that.
Yeah, I think. Look, I'm very in touch with the Jewish community, and I could tell you now that the Jewish community, most of the Jewish community don't particularly consider themselves religious, or it's about religion. It's more about an ethnic group. But that's aside from the point. I think most people in the Jewish community don't. So those that support these laws are just, they don't even know really what it is. They just feel like they're under attack, and they don't understand. They don't understand the potential consequences of these laws, like the one that I mentioned earlier. But I think most Jews, when you talk to them, they don't trust the government. They're like, we know that there are so many laws, like so many things that have happened since October 7. There are already laws in place when it comes to inciting violence, when it comes to actual violent crimes that happened and just weren't prosecuted, that nobody gave a crap when you're telling me now you're going to start enforcing, banning the swastika or banning the Nazi salute or whatever it is, like hand gestures. Like nobody in the Jewish community really, or there are. I'm not saying nobody. That, like you said, like the Jewish community is just like the broader community. There is a spectrum. You have people all the way from the far left, mind you. I will admit that the far left has shrunk in the Jewish community since October 7th, since they've realised that so many of their allies have turned on them since October 7th. So I think much of that far left have moved to the centre or much closer to the centre. But, you have all the way to way past me. And I know they like to call me far right, but there are plenty of, especially ultra-Orthodox Jews, that on most issues would be much more to the right than I am. But yeah, I agree on that. Now, I don't have a segue for the next issue. I don't even know much about the story, but it did make the rounds, and I thought we'll bring it up here just because I remember this story when it happened, and I don't know if there is any connection between the death or, and to be honest, I haven't even had a chance to really read it. I just saw, if you remember this shocking story, I'm not going to play it here because it might be too graphic for the live feed, but I remember at the height of COVID, it probably 23rd of September in 2021. So that was, I remember the first time I was 2021. So that was a year after. So that was well and truly at the height of COVID. You had this one protester who was pretty well known, and he was slammed down to the ground, like it was a brutal takedown that was completely unwarranted, and nothing came of it, if I remember correctly. I don't know if you guys remember, but it turns out that he's passed away. Now, again, I'm not saying it has anything to do with that. I do understand that he had pre-existing mental health issues. We can see here, so I'm not going to speculate on what it is, but it does bring back those memories of that insanity that we lived through here in Victoria. David, did you see this story, and did it kind of affect you anyway? Like it literally affected me when I just saw the story.
Yeah, so we've been pretty close to this, actually. So, as millions of other people, I saw the video when it happened. It was sickening at the time. Like, you see someone take a bump like that to the head and you wonder whether they survive, right? Like, because many people couldn't withstand a bump to the head like that. He was in a very bad condition. As you say, he passed away in March this year. I actually did a speech on this in Parliament last week. My team...
There you go. I didn't even know I was bringing it up to the right person.
Yeah, so I did a speech on this exact topic last week in Parliament. My team... It's a very sad story, and if you watch my video, I actually lost it when I was reading it out, and it's just one of those things that's awful. So we managed to hunt down and find his mother, Margaret. His mother's a nurse. Daniel had lots of you're right, he had mental health issues for many years, as do many Victorians, and he used to come into the city often to meet homeless people. Like, he had friends amongst the homeless people in the city. He would often give them small gifts and things, try and look out for their welfare. The morning that he went into the city, I don't know if you remember, during the pandemic, there was a small earthquake at one point. Do you remember that? It was on September 21st, I think, 2021. Anyway, Daniel apparently was worried about his friends in the city. And so he came into the city to check on his friends, and he went around and checked his friends. And anyway, he had a mask exemption. Now, you might remember that I spoke a lot about mask mandates. There was a mask mandate at the time. He actually had a letter from a doctor in his pocket, is my understanding, is what his mother Margaret told me. He loved, he was everyone tells me he was a kind young man. His mother told me that he had never had any trouble with police before. He'd had great relations with police in Eltham that were very kind to him. But for some reason on this morning, he had an altercation with police about his mask, and they threw him to the ground. His mother said that he was never the same after that. He suffered PTSD almost immediately. His poor mother felt terrible that he couldn't contact her because she was at work. And she immediately resigned and retired from her career to look after him. And then, unfortunately, in March this year, he passed away. Now, like you say, I don't know the reasons of his death. The coroner's report's going to come out in June. But I think, from my point of view, this is like, we spoke about mask mandates at the time and how they were having all these sorts of unintended consequences on people who had physical and mental conditions that meant that they couldn't wear masks. I think that this is probably the most tragic case that you could think of that's happened during the pandemic, where this poor young man who was just showing kindness to homeless people in the city has had this awful, awful assault against him. And from all reports, he was just a kind young man. And so I brought that up in Parliament last week. You can watch that on my social media.
What? I'm actually going to play it here now. I found it while you're talking.
Yeah, it only goes for a minute.
Yeah, it's a minute and a half. Let's watch it.
It's very emotional, though, so I'm going to get upset again. I can feel it. But anyway.
That's all right. We let you get emotional on this show.
Thank you, President. I rise to recognise the life of Daniel Peterson English. Daniel was a kind, generous and sensitive young man who loved films, animals and video games. But most of all, he loved his mum, Margaret. Daniel suffered from mental illness for many years, and he appreciated everything that Margaret did for him. He reminded her often by leaving flowers for her to find at the door of their home in Eltham when she returned from her shift as a nurse. But the demonisation of people during the pandemic led to a tragic series of events. Margaret tells us that up to the 22nd of September 2021, Daniel had only experienced kindness from local police. But on that morning, after being unsettled by a minor earthquake, he travelled to the city by train, as he often did, to check on his friends amongst the homeless people in the city. Daniel had an exemption from wearing a mask, but this led to an argument with police, culminating in him being thrown violently to the tiles of Flinders Street Station. The footage is sickening and was seen by millions. Margaret ended her long career immediately to care for him because she felt terrible that she was unable to answer Daniel's calls for help that day. She says, Daniel suffered from PTSD ever since and was never the same. He passed away in March this year. He was only 32. Sorry. Let the record show that Daniel English was greatly loved by his family and the community and will be missed by all.
Yeah, that is...
It's very heavy stuff. I mean...
It is heavy stuff. Look,
It's heavy stuff. And look, I felt it important that, Parliament's a funny thing, right? I feel like it's a record, like everything that people say in Parliament goes on the record. And I felt like it was important that someone told his story and put it on the record at the very least, so that one day someone in the future will look at it and say, well, someone noticed this poor guy and what happened to him and at least told his story. So that's why I did it. It was pretty traumatic. And we checked with Margaret. We checked with Margaret before doing it because I didn't want to make things worse for her. She's a woman suffering grief, and no parent should have to go through that. I don't know the full story of exactly what happened, but I'm sure the coroner will come out with a report. But we checked with her before saying that in Parliament. She was happy for us to talk about it in Parliament. So I didn't want to talk about it without checking with her first. But I feel like many Victorians that it's awful what happened to him. And I think many people wanted to know the story. Like, what was he doing there? Why did they attack him? What sort of person was he, And so I tried to do my best to tell that story.
Well, I think the viewers...
Yeah, because I was going to say, it was a time that, law enforcement took great liberty in the way that they inflicted violence against just ordinary people in public, not even criminals, like over these masks and things, like the way they kind of, this psychosis took over them, and the way that they approached, someone talking to them about having an exemption just would drive some of these police officers mad. And I know it can't be a reflection on every single police officer, but there is something to do that because we saw so many examples of that within law enforcement itself. And I think Victoria bore the brunt of that. We all know that on this panel tonight, we saw it firsthand out there on the streets. And this is just a representation of the very worst of that type of violence, I think, that people were put through. And, many people suffered in...
A single man by himself, not causing any trouble. Like, he wasn't
weapons.
going to
what can he do? Exactly.
He wasn't going to a protest. He wasn't antagonizing people. He was going to help homeless people in the city.
But none of that context mattered at that time. What I noticed a lot during that time with David was that to the police, none of those things mattered. It was just like, if you're on the street, you're like an enemy of the state. Listen to what we tell you, or we will take you down however we like because of this mask. And that's why you saw all these insane videos out of Victoria. And I can't, to this day, still believe that no one in position of leadership looked at that, especially at Victoria Police, the head honchos, and looked at what was happening and thought, how is this going to be looked at in the future when people, have settled down and we prosecute the past? How is this going to be looked at? And it's awful. It's actually sickening. And your emotion is warranted, because when you think about all those things that did happen during that time, it was, of course, the seriousness of the pandemic, whatever that people want to discuss, they're free to do that. But we know for many of those things like masks and vaccines, judgment on how effective those things are is very much pointing to a situation where a lot of the information that the public received during that time was incorrect. And that no kind of leniency was shown to people, that there was no, all these things just went straight to violence many times. I think there needs to be a great learning and reflection from law enforcement that when this does happen in some other instance, for whatever reason in the future, that they remember the way that we saw them during that time and the way that we see them today. And I think, my relationship with the police will never be the same because I saw it, just how bad it was. And I think generations of Victorians who lived through that probably have the same relationship now. And that's a really sad point for our society.
I think the one thing that gets missed, though, as well, is I was probably like you, Rukshan, during the pandemic, in that I blamed everything on police. But actually, the police were given their orders by the public
Yeah,
health
that's true.
bureaucrats. And
That's
that's
true.
where the blame really needs to lie, because the public health bureaucrats came up with all these crazy ideas that needed to be enforced by police that had never been trained to do these sorts of things. Police didn't, like, no police officer signed up to harass people for not wearing a mask. Not a single
But
police officer in
I
this
do
state
agree.
signed up.
I agree with you in
I agree to a
principle,
point.
but I think that there is also two things can be true at the same time, and two people can be held responsible for the same thing. One thing I did notice during the pandemic is there was different types of police, right? And we see that today. It just really exposed the bad eggs, those that were on a power trip using the excuse of the emergency powers that they were given by these health bureaucrats that weren't even true, turns out, whatever. So yes, the government 100% should be held accountable for that. And they're not going to be ever, but they should be. But at the same time, we can also look at the police behaviour at the time and go, okay, there is a problem with some of the force. I met heaps of cops that were cool at the time. Like, people don't know this. Even during those protests, you know how many times cops would come up to me and get a selfie on the side privately, quietly, and telling me I'm not getting involved in any of that. I've never issued anything. We're just told we have to be at whatever, at this place or whatever. They come, but they don't actually agree with it. But then there were cops that you could see were, reveling in the power that they were given or they thought they had. And that was a problem. So there were some cops.
It's the government's job. It's the government's job to set up oversight systems to make sure that doesn't get out of control. And they didn't do it properly. They didn't. There wasn't.
And that's where you're right. It's because the state was making them do it. So there was no oversight because they were the ones giving them the power to do it.
And they set up. They demonized people to the point where this was socially acceptable to treat people like this.
Yeah.
Like I did it publicly and privately through letters, through meetings. I was almost begging the chief health officer, please change your messaging on masks. Like, if someone's not wearing a mask, don't attack them and demonize them. Just understand that maybe they've got a good reason for that and show them compassion. But instead, the government didn't do that at all. They just demonized anyone that didn't wear a mask. And the police felt that it was socially acceptable to treat people that weren't wearing masks as criminals. This young man, he wasn't a criminal. He had an exemption, he was doing everything right. But because of the demonization, they went after him anyway. And we had this absolutely tragic consequence.
Yeah. And I got to say, thanks, David, for actually bringing it up. I didn't know that you did bring it up. I saw the story and it actually validates for me the way I felt when I just came across the story. And I'm sure a lot of people viewing this who remember that time and remember that specific story, probably felt similar to what I did, but I guess I felt alone in that because it kind of triggered something in my head going on, the shivers down your spine and the goosebumps that I got just seeing it and thinking,
Well, about martial arts, right? About the types of things that the human body is capable and not capable of receiving, right? You see a young man have his head thrown against the tiles. That's not good, right? That's a very serious thing to do to someone. I was surprised he survived it. Anyone that watched
you could
it and
hear
heard
it. You could hear him crash to the ground.
It was sickening. It was absolutely. It made your stomach churn. The sound, and you're just like, oh my god! My first thought was, did they kill him? He survived, but yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that. Now, I don't know how we segue from that. There's a lot of comments in support of that. Let's quickly read. I guess this is a good one for just generally that period of time from Stu.
Thanks, Stu. Repeal the bad laws, David.
I think that's just a general. I think David just wants to repeal all laws.
Well, no, not all laws. Look, the libertarian view is that laws are valid when they protect people from harming other people. Like that's when my view.
I know,
is
but this
that,
is where that's where it gets kind of
yeah,
muddy
like
because
our
like
laws are all the
where
other ones. Yeah. So I mean, the laws that gave the government the power in the first place to come up with those mandates, that they still exist, and they've always existed. They've existed for a long time, and in many cases, the government has used laws like this responsibly. One thing that people often forget is just before the pandemic, the government had a disaster declaration. Now, disaster laws in Victoria are even more draconian than the emergency laws or the pandemic laws, but they used them during a bushfire. Most people sort of agreed that they used them in a responsible way. We were concerned when they started using them because, libertarians don't like emergency powers. And, they sort of used them okay. There was problems, but it wasn't terrible. They ended on time when you would expect. And then when we came into the pandemic, rather naively, we thought, oh, well, they're going to use them for a few weeks, just like they did during the bushfire. They'll get things under control and then we'll be back to normal. Of course, none of that happened. But, that's how we went into it. And it never turned out that way in the end.
Yeah. Well, here we are, and I can't believe how long ago it all was. It feels like yesterday. Before we wrap up, I want to just play just a moment from today's rally that was caught from the live stream. So sorry about the quality, guys. You can watch the full report tomorrow. Like I said, this is from the live stream. And while I'm here, remember, if you're watching us on whatever platform you're watching it on, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell that you do get live streams as they happen. Rukshan, this is a bit for you and Joel, the host, the guest host. Some protesters that I bumped into, I just put it at the point that I think is relevant here. I was walking away.
Joel's eyebrows for us too. Yeah?
Joel's eyebrows.
Yeah,
Jeff message, so they're down the actually live. This one will be live.
Joel, love your eyebrows, mate. Keep it up.
That's Joel Jamal, who comes onto the Opposition podcast. He's been a guest host recently. He's going to come back. He's going away at the moment. But so tonight we've got the Opposition podcast with David Limbrick from 7 p.m. Hit that notification button. You'll get the notification straight away when that's happening. So we've got Limbrick on tonight. We're going to talk a bit about this, and I might bring this clip up and maybe zoom into Joel's eyebrows while he's away.
Oh, why not? We love Rukshan too. Keep getting
now you've gone too far. Now you've gone too far.
Stuck into Rukshan. We love the banter.
I think your beard and Joel's eyebrows.
You think they'd go well together?
Yeah, I just think you wouldn't see a face.
Right. That'd be good. That'd be good.
It'd be an improvement for Joel.
It would.
That's great. That's great.
Good times. It was actually a really pleasant protest today. I didn't know what to expect. I haven't been to one of those yet. I haven't been to many protests lately. But I found the crowd super welcoming, nice, and a lot of them were actually supporters of Rebel. I just had zero ideas to what I was walking into. They're good guys. You know how many people invited me to come down to the country out in like 4 hours drives, and where they have like crazy snakes and spiders and stuff that I don't do. But they were all super nice. I really enjoyed it today, and I think you missed out, Rukshan.
Yeah, I do. I was a bit envious, to be completely honest. That I missed
How does
out
it
on
feel
that,
being like, Lydia Thorpe's staffer and being stopped from being able to go to any of these? Rukshan, so
it was really funny. Not last Friday, but the Friday before, when they had the first protest, I was looking around and there was hardly any cops anywhere. And I was saying to my team, geez, it's weird that there's no cops here. And they're going, look around. Like, it's a bunch of firefighters and farmers. Like, what sort of trouble are they going to cause, Like,
that's true.
And I said, well, yeah. If I was a police commissioner, I probably wouldn't waste resources on it either. They're even going up and picking up their own rubbish and stuff. So, there wasn't going to be any punch-ons there unless, someone tried to come along and cause trouble, which... exactly. I don't know whether you've seen them. They're pretty big blokes. I wouldn't want to cause trouble with them. So.
Yeah, there were some big boys, and they're all like they're real men that they go and fight. They go and fight fires. Like they're not even they volunteer to fight fires. You got to be a certain kind of, and they're farmers. Like They do.
Yeah.
They do shit I can't do. Guaranteed.
Yeah, like you shake hands with them and they've got hands of steel sort of thing. And, like, yeah.
And there was one guy, I told him at one point, and you could see in the live stream, I go, do you mind just stepping down on a step lower? And he stepped down, and I'm short anyways, but he was still taller than me. We went back to back, and he was still taller than me down a step. It was completely uncalled for. And I think I told him I believe we should cut the tax and cut a bit of your height too. It's not okay. But
Taxi seat. Yeah.
But Rukshan, do you miss the days of live streaming these protests? And how does it feel to sell out to become a political staffer instead of giving the people what they want and leaving it up to me?
As David Limbrick would know, some people have to do real work in the world, and that's kind of the cross that we bear when we start working in politics like that. And you, Avi, sitting at home in your studio, hardly going out to protest anymore. You just said that yourself before, live streaming things and getting people to call into you.
Doing a live stream a day. I think I do plenty more work than you do in Lydia Thorpe's office. Yeah. But I think David's like, is he actually working for Lydia Thorpe? What's going on? What am I missing?
Who is he working for? I don't even know, but anyway.
It's all a mystery.
That's secret, Rukshan.
It's a secret. Yeah.
Rukshan's got a dirty little secret, and we just go with Lydia Thorpe because... And look, I don't blame him. I also would keep this one pretty secret.
Well, there's... Yeah.
Limbrick,
I'll wait and see. I'll pass judgment then.
No comments.
Well, we're about to wrap up. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Where can people find you, David, on socials or whatever?
Yeah, so I'm on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I don't have a big YouTube following yet. I only just started it recently, so please subscribe if you're on YouTube. But if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing and what the libertarian movement in Australia is doing more generally, please give me a follow. I try and do some serious stuff, but I try and have a joke every now and then as well. So I'll try and keep you entertained.
Amazing. Thanks, David. Thank you so much.
Rukshan, what do you want to plug tonight?
No, look, you guys can follow me on X at The Real Rukshan. That's where you'll mostly find me. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook, YouTube, or at my website, realrukshan.com. But I'm having a lot of fun. I'll be doing these lives and getting a bit more serious.
Of course you are. You're not doing any work. I'm doing everything.
Yeah, still setting up this room. I'll have a good camera soon. I'll have a good camera and maybe a different background.
In. That is the extent of your
great.
work.
This is the dream. This is the dream of multicultural, diverse Australia. We just come and then you do all the work.
It's so crazy because I
just log in.
I used to just brag about how I don't have to do anything. I just come to our podcast and I literally don't even think about it till before you prep everything. And somehow you found a way to turn it on me, and now I'm doing the legwork.
I'm that one anomaly, that one Indian tech support guy that doesn't actually do the tech support and just logs in and enjoys life. So I'm that guy. There has to be one. So I'll take that.
Guys, and just don't forget, whatever platform you're watching on now, hit the subscribe and the notification bell. We are doing a lot more lives. I think we are going to do some lives together. I want to do some of the street stuff with Rukshan if I can get him out of Lydia's office. But either way, I will be, when I do, I did enjoy today. So I think whenever I go out to hit even the streets, I might do it, give you behind the scenes so you can actually see how I do a whole day. Sometimes I do, a few hours of filming and then we produce it and publish it as a 20, 30-minute video. And those of you that think it's all cut up and whatever, you get to see the raw parts. I've got nothing to hide. I enjoy... There's nothing more that I like than people watching me for 3 hours straight. So I'm going to live stream it because I'm a narcissist. And aside from that, I know everyone's looking at my T-shirt. I wore that all today. It's a big feature in today's video. So you can get your own one at rebelstore.com.au. Check out all the merch there. But aside from that, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Good night, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
See you on Thursday.
Thanks, David. Thanks, guys.